Exactly 1 week ago, I made a first impression video for Diablo 4 Lord of Hatred expansion. And now the time has come to go a bit deeper, in depth so to speak, in order to see what this expansion is all about and whether or not my opinion changed based on the things that I've said in previous video. So let's get started, shall we? To give some context about what I was doing in game, well, I played two classes. First I started as a Warlock, then I changed to Paladin, but I would say parallel I was playing both of them because I wanted to see the different mechanics and playstyles and how everything changes according to my, view of the classes. In that sense, I played Warlock for 61 hours, while for Paladin I played only 18 hours. That is not a lot when it comes to the Paladin situation, but keep in mind that I was around Paragon 200 or something like that when I switched to Paladin, so it was relatively easy in order to jump into the endgame and experience it like I was doing it with Warlock. Basically, Warlock was my main character in order to gear other characters, and I fully exploited that particular situation because obviously why wouldn't you? Also, when it comes to builds, I started playing Summoner Warlock initially through the campaign, but in the middle of it, I switched to Dread Claws and I pushed all the way till Torment 10 when I switched to Apocalypse Warlock. And that's essentially the build that I'm currently playing when I switch back to Warlock. When it comes to Paladin, I initially started leveling it normally, not going through the campaign, but rather doing all the normal activities that you have. But then around level 40, I asked my friend to boost me, which happened. He did it in the pit. And because I got that unique amulet drop for me, which is the cornerstone of the Winged Strike build, I decided to go with that one. Because upon further research, it seemed that Oradin Paladin, which is something that I wanted to play initially, was not that potent to begin with. With the Warlock, I managed to kill Mephisto on tier 10 in order to unlock Seasonal Journey, which is the last one that you need in order to, I suppose, finish the game. And as far as farming is concerned, I can do Torment 12 stuff easily because Apocalypse is overpowered as fuck. I have seen hitting trillions of damage, it's completely insane. When it comes to Paladin, I can do tier 12 with it. I haven't tried Mephisto, but the damage with Winged Strike is decent enough in order to attempt that particular boss fight, but more on that later. I suppose when you look at this whole situation with Diablo 4, the main thing what everyone wants to know is what's the endgame like. In that sense, let's start with Warplans. I think Warplans are a good way to engage players with all the activities that the game can provide. Back in the day, that was a huge problem for me because, again, there was no reason to do nightmare dungeons or any other content that wasn't optimal in terms of the gear that you're supposed to get. All of this changed with Warplans because it fundamentally changes the way that you play endgame, since you can essentially engage with everything and you still get rewards that you can consider to be really good. The activities that are encompassed by the Warplans are as follows: Nightmare Dungeons, Hell Tides, the Undercity, Lair Bosses, Infernal Hordes, and the Pit. When you complete a certain Warplan or chosen setup of the Warplan, you get rewarded with activity skill points, which then you can use in the command table in order to level that particular activity and from a certain point of view customizing it in order to get more loot, but from a certain point of view to customize it a bit because it doesn't really play exactly like you're used to. You give it some kind of a flair, so to speak. And while this whole Warplan situation seems interesting, I have a certain problem with it. The main issue here is all about alts. You see, if you roll an alt, you don't inherit the Warplan progress that you already achieved with your main character. And to be honest, I'm kinda conflicted about the whole situation. Because essentially, if you want an alt or many alts, you would have to grind continuously in order to reach the max level with the Warplans. Because again, these modifications that you can put in the command table are a significant advantage when it comes for you to experience the Warplan situation. But at the same time, if your alt is 100% ready to jump into these things, it might be a bit trivial in order to experience the whole mechanic, so to speak. So in this particular sense, I don't know. I feel conflicted. I don't know what's the right thing to do, whether or not if we should transition the Warplan progress to all characters, so it should be account-wide, or we should do it like 50% XP to the old characters, and then, if you go and play with the old character, you get 100%, but all the other characters get 50% XP. That way you are still achieving some sort of progress, and in the end of the day, if you decide to roll the third or fourth character, you will have enough experience gained from the first two characters that is going to be, you feel like you earned it, so essentially you will unlock everything on account-based progress, but not immediately just playing one class. And when it comes to alts, I have another problem, which is the level of mythic uniques. Back in the day, the mythical uniques were level 35, now they're level 70. And that particular situation is kinda demotivating me to start another character, or at very least, I should save my whisper caches in order to get XP from there without paying someone to boost me or to beg someone to do the same thing for me like I did with my paladin. I would pretty much like to see the level 35 back, so I can go through any content on my own and enjoy the game like that without skipping one to level 70 and at least have some fun. But yeah, generally speaking, the situation now, with Warplans and the mythical uniques that I already mentioned, is not favorable towards alts. And I would argue, especially now with all these new things, it would be amazing for us to try as many classes as possible in order to enjoy the new expansion as well as all the elements that it brings with it. Next point I want to touch on is the skill tree reworks. And while initially it seems like we have more options, which is true, your build or your skill tree is pretty much done at level 40 in terms of what you're choosing in order to modify it to fit your playstyle better. And then the rest of the abilities or other points that you need to put in the skill trees are exclusively going to the skills themselves, boosting the ranks of them. I don't understand why this is a thing. And to me, it seems like the whole skill tree, like I said, after level 40 becomes obsolete. Again, this is one of those things that I cannot really put my finger on because I don't know whether or not this is a good or a bad idea. And to be honest, this is not a game-breaking problem. I don't see it as an issue, at least when I compare it to the Warplan situation that I was talking about. So I don't really know. Perhaps this is some kind of a mechanic for them to, I suppose, control certain builds or power creep. But now that I think about it, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So I don't really know. If you have better ideas why this whole situation with skills is the way that it is, please leave a comment. I'm 100% reading everything, so yeah, I'm also interested about the whole situation. Next big change that happened is the Horadric cube, and I would say finally we have crafting in this game. Yeah, you had some type of crafting when it came to re-rolling stats, but crafting from scratch, like picking up a blue item and then gradually improving it to the legendary state, adding affixes and all that stuff, we definitely didn't have that, but now this is a reality. And I kinda like this whole system because even now when I'm playing on tier 12, I am looking for blues with greater affix in order to transform them into the cube and make them a valuable or viable gear piece, which I can use later. And there are many instances where I actually managed to do that, and now these items are kinda the main items of my whole build. So when it comes to Horadric Cube, I think this is a huge win, and we really needed this particular system. Same thing can be said about the Talisman system, because finally we are getting set items back, but with a different flavor. If you remember from Diablo 3, these set items were genuine items, and once you slot them in your gear, that's about it, and those were the build-defining items, and everybody was running them, so majority of your build were set items. However, in Diablo 4, I think this is an ingenious way of making it viable, and whoever came up with this shit, you should give him a raise because this is an amazing system. We still get our set items, but we are not oversaturating our gear because the whole Talisman system is like a secondary gear system which is somewhere in the background, but it still gives you all the amazing bonuses and buffs that you get with it. The seasonal progression has also been changed because now we have more seasonal journeys to begin with, or rather quests, because back in the day I could finish seasonal journey in 24 hours provided that the objectives weren't retarded, just like there were back in Season 12. The whole sentiment that I'm getting from seasonal progression is that yes, it's more grindy, but it's a reasonable grind. I suppose the seasonal change is a response from Blizzard to us, I suppose, bitching about how fast the seasonal journey can be completed, which, by the way, sometimes it took me around 24 hours in order to complete everything. And I always wanted to engage with the game more, so I reckon there we have it. It's there. It will take several, I suppose, days in order to complete the seasonal journey because certain things are kinda tricky to do. But at the end of the day, I think it's a good thing for the game in general sense of things. Another vital element that was added to the game is the loot filter. We finally have it after so many years of begging to give us the fucking loot filter, and now it's a reality. And guess what? It's an amazing thing, and this should have been added ages ago, but better late than never, I suppose. I use it heavily, and you can customize it as much as you want, and there is nothing bad that I can say about it. Maybe add more options, but again, I didn't use it that much. I just set up a very basic filter where it hides certain things and shows only greater affix gear, and that's about it. I reckon you can do more, but for my needs, this is basically what I need in order to avoid the whole loot clutter that can happen while you are farming stuff or whatever the fuck you're doing. Other features that were introduced are fishing, which I tried and it's just a gimmick. You can kinda use it in between hell tides if you're farming that particular activity. Then we have map overlay, which again was something that we requested for many years, but now I got used to the normal map, so I find it to be, it's there, but I don't really use it. I suppose in my situation it came too late, so now I don't see it as a vital upgrade, I just see it as an option that I might never use properly. It's a shame because back in the day it would have been much better if it was from day one, but it is what it is. Maybe I just need to rebind everything in order to, put it somewhere when I'm used to, like for example tab, which opens everything, so I don't know. I guess I might experiment later in the season, we will see, but it seems highly unlikely. There were other overhauls that I didn't specifically mention, like the pit overhaul, the lair boss overhaul, stuff like that, and I won't go into details with these things because A, I already talked too much about these things, and B, you can find it online. It's very easy. Go to, any site that supports Diablo and you'll find the whole list, what got changed and in what way it got changed. What I want to focus now is my personal experiences while I was playing the game. I suppose the biggest problem that I have with this season is the visual clutter, and in this expansion is honestly out of fucking control. There were so many moments where I died simply because I couldn't see what the fuck was happening on the screen. If you play Apocalypse Warlock, you know what I'm talking about. Between spell effects, enemy effects, explosions, environmental hazard, and all the particles constantly flying in your face, combat sometimes becomes visual slop. Difficulty-wise, it's okay, but if you are dying because the game buried critical information under 20 fucking layers of effects, it's frustrating rather than a challenge. Put it this way, if I fuck up, I want it to be because I made a mistake, not because the screen looked like fireworks going off inside a bloody tornado. And speaking about dying, the on-death effects are getting ridiculous. Or after death, or whatever the fuck you wanna call them. The thing that happens when shit explodes on the ground and you die because you didn't see it. Do we really need enemies exploding after death and instantly deleting you? Because it feels like the game constantly punishes aggression in the most annoying way possible. You clear the pack, your brain naturally relaxes for half a second, you wanna, loot shit, and then suddenly you are dead because some delayed explosion triggered underneath your character in between all that visual chaos. And after a while it stops feeling threatening and starts feeling fucking cheap. Difficulty should come from engaging combat mechanics, not hidden revenge bombs after enemies are already dead. I suppose one thing that you can do in order to solve this problem is just reduce the damage. It should feel punishing because now you need to pop a potion, but not in a way that immediately kills you. I don't know, this thing frustrates me so much, and combined with visual clutter, I died so many fucking times for nothing, especially until I got the upgrade for the Hell Tide, which allows me to retain all my cinders after dying. Because that's the only reason I picked that fucking upgrade, just so I can play the game properly, or at least farm the chests, or whatever I had in mind at that time. Also, since we are on this particular topic of dying from all kinds of shit without you actually knowing what killed you, I believe it's high time that the game gets some kind of a combat text thing, which will show you what the hell happened and how much damage you took from certain effects in order for you to know what killed you, because most of the time, sometimes out of the blue, I don't even know what killed me. Yeah, you get the prompt, ABC was killed by this and that, or usually in name of the mob, but that doesn't mean anything. I actually want to see what kind of effect killed me, how much damage I took, and then maybe I can inspect my resistances, see whether or not I actually made a mistake gearing a character, and then later on, after I find the resistance that I need, I kinda swap it for something else that's not that important, and life goes on. But at the moment, identifying what kills you is actually a fucking pain because it's impossible to do so. You can kinda deduce what happened, but when you are doing, for example, Lilith or Mephisto, it would be nice to see what kind of effect killed you, because then you can kind of learn the fight. And since I'm touching on the Mephisto and Lilith, Lilith is still a piece of shit fight. I don't think they even revisited that fight and they were like, hey, just fuck it, it's there, let's leave it like that. But when it comes to Mephisto fight, one thing particularly that enraged me was the fucking cutscenes. You absolutely cannot skip them, and it just kills the whole momentum, because now I'm slogging through, 30 seconds or a minute of cutscenes, and all my focus is going away because, again, game is kinda sabotaging me in that sense. I understand that you want these cutscenes when you are doing the whole campaign, but if I'm going to farm him or kill him repeatedly, I want the experience to be as seamless as possible. I don't expect there will be no cutscene whatsoever, but at least let me skip them. Also, speaking about the whole Mephisto fight, I get it, it's a primeval, it's the end boss of the whole campaign, I understand that. But certain one-shots mechanic are actually quite punishing. I suppose that's probably because the whole situation of the visual clutter issue. So maybe if we had less visual clutter, we would notice these things, but again, if you don't build your character in a certain way, you're going to regret it. And what I mean by building in a certain way, it means that you need to have this charm called Enduring Faith. That essentially stops you from getting one shot. But then it becomes the whole thing, it becomes a meta. You need to have it in order to do this fucking thing, unless you have this Uber Giga Chad build that allows you to one-shot him immediately. Or rather, not one-shot him, you 3-time tap him and then he switches the phases, and that's basically how it works. So I don't think that he is that difficult because it's easy to figure things around, but having this one particular item to be a game changer in order to kill him, it feels cheap a bit. Like I said, I already killed him, it took me some time, but stuff definitely changed after I got the said item, but at the end of the day, I don't think that this should be a thing. If you want to make a character that's tanky, which by the way it's very hard to do in Diablo because most of the time everybody's going for the giga damage, then fine, but let me soak these things by default. And if you want to make a glass cannon characters with all the dodges and stuff, fine again, but you signed up for that. So my point is the whole combat situation or the boss fight is okay. I like how the whole phases are working and is definitely better than Lilith. But I believe that the thing is a bit overtuned, especially with so many one-shot mechanics. But that's just me. I don't know if other people had issues with it, but I just felt a bit shitty because without the Enduring Faith charm, it would still be a struggle. Since I already babbled too much about the whole situation, I'm just going to put some small snippets of what I found to be problematic in the game while I was playing. So for starters, it would be nice if there is a different color for charms when they dropped or set bonuses or whatever. Usually they all have the same color as uniques, but I would definitely like it to be green because that was the way in Diablo 3, so I don't know why they didn't change it or they simply designated it to be a unique item. Another problem that I noticed is the world bosses are getting killed fast again, and I'm one to blame as well, because when I hit a world boss with 10 fucking trillion damage, obviously it's gonna fucking die immediately, so I don't know what happened, but again, we are still back at 0, or rather what it was, season 2 or 3, where we were just one-shotting bosses with Hota barbs. Next on the list is a server stability. Servers are still shit. I still have rubber banding, I still have lag, no matter what I do. There are certain talks about game still having memory leaks. I don't know when that's going to get fixed, if it's going to get fixed, but it's still a thing. The lack of in-game trading, as in in-game auction house, is still shitty as fuck. All credit to Diablo.trade people who made some kind of a auction house, but this thing should be in-game. If they can make a loot filter function in the same way, they can bloody well make it work for auction house, because I really don't want to alt-tab non-stop in order to trade my items. I want it to be in-game. I think it's high time for this to happen because this is just ridiculous. I didn't engage with leaderboards because I believe the system is dumb as fuck. What happens is you are essentially pushing one build so everyone can reach the top, which is dumb again. Why can't we do something like we had in Diablo 3, where individual builds are competing with each other and instead everybody is just piled up per class, which is to me completely fucking dumb. As always, I want more storage. I don't think that the number of storage tabs that we have right now is enough, especially if you're going to roll several alts. It kinda messes with your experimentation, because if you are trying several builds, there are several sets that you need to put in your storage, so yeah, it's a fucking pain. And finally, I want to talk about the unique item situation, because as you know, they don't have fixed affixes anymore. So yeah, I don't know what to think about that whole situation. On one hand, it kind of pushes you to farm these items to find the perfect or the best thing possible that you currently can find, given the volatility of affixes that are introduced in that particular item type. But at the same time, if you get a, let's say, 3 GA or 4 GA drop and it's just dogshit stats, it's kind of infuriating, because that happened to me. I saw one of the uniques that I wanted to be on that particular level, so to speak, and it just was a fucking shit show, because the stats were, I don't know, life per hit, impaired effects, stupid shit like that nobody gives a fuck. Again, at the same time, it's cool because you can farm these items and obviously you can re-roll them in the queue, but at the same time, it feels like shit. So I don't know really what to think about the whole situation. Maybe allow us to modify these things in the cube. So yeah, I would lean more towards those things being static, or at least certain stats being static, and then others are kind of switching back and forth. For example, core stats like life and strength should be static, while the other things are kind of re-rolling. Or certain affixes for core stats like +3 to something that are definitely orientated to those items should be fixed, because it makes no fucking sense that I get a, let's say, unique for Dread Claws and it rolls fucking, I don't know, plus something to Apocalypse, because that's completely stupid. I can live with the fact that it's rolling, I don't know, attack speed, critical strike chance, critical strike damage, overpower, whatnot, but that particular stat should be fixed. So I suppose certain stats should be or must be fixed, while the other stats can, fluctuate, and then depending on whether or not you need that or you want that, you can kind of keep it. But if you want to change certain stats, I reckon you need the same of the item that you already picked. So for example, I don't know, you have 10 of the same and then you put it in the cube and then you're using that item to reroll the stat that you want, essentially. So you're still farming the uniques, but at the end of the day, you're getting at least in a deterministic way what you want. And that's pretty much it when it comes to all the shit that I have written down. Obviously, I didn't script this. I was just talking about things that I wrote on a piece of paper and I just went with it. The final verdict about this whole expansion and the changes that were introduced, I would say it's very positive. There are definitely 100% certain things that should be reanalyzed in order to see whether or not the benefits are much greater than the shortcomings of the set change. And I reckon in the following weeks or months, that's going to be a thing, particularly when it comes to, I don't know, Season 14 or something like that. At the end of the day, it's just kind of sad that it took, 2-3 years in order to make this game to be like this. But I suppose if you want to have a silver lining behind all this situation, is better late than never. It's not an awesome thing to say, or it's not an awesome feeling to have, but it is what it is. All I can say is, after a long bloody time, I'm actually having fun in this game, which means that the whole situation is going in a proper direction. And now it remains to be seen whether or not Blizzard or Diablo 4 devs will ride this way further, or they're just going to do stupid shit like they did in the past. Hopefully that's not going to be a case, but again, being vigilant or remaining vigilant is not a bad idea when it comes to Blizzard and Diablo 4. But at the end of the day, that's just my take. Let me know in the comments what you think about the whole expansion situation and the changes that happened, and whether or not you would like to change something or keep it as is. And if you enjoyed my blabbing, don't forget to like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. That's it from me. Until the next one.